Hey guys, today we're talking about how to craft a top tier amulet in the cube in Diablo 4. For example, guaranteed to turn this into that, while barely spending any resources. New off here with you, and let me skip the intro and show you everything using a white amulet as an example. And then a legendary one with a GA. I'll walk you through every single step from the beginning with no exceptions or skipping any details. And once we've gone through the whole cycle, I'll show you how to finish an existing amulet with a GA to top tier quality. After this video, you'll understand the principle and you'll be able to craft anything you need, meaning any items. So, how to craft amulets. We put a white amulet in the cube, preferably with 900 power. For crafting, it's always best to use items with 900 power because they have a higher stat range and, for instance, a chance for a GA while tempering at the blacksmith. So, we put it in the cube and now we choose the prism to add a core stat. We added 3 stats to the item. Since our prism gives not only a core stat but also a bonus to skills, we'll always in any situation get a core stat plus a bonus to some skill group and inevitably plus to all skills. The specific stat values don't matter right now. The important thing is just to get them. Next, we select the targeted stat change option. The same prism is used. By doing this, we are changing one random stat from this category to another random stat from the same category. You can count the number of attempts by the prism spent. I started with 359, now I have 348. That's 9 spent. But that's not all. For my current build, I need plus to whirlwind, which is a core skill, or plus to defensive skills because I use 4 of them, iron skin and the 3 shouts. But this isn't about that. It's about how to get the stat we need, instead of the useless one on our amulet. You can keep rolling using the previous recipe until you get the desired result, but that will take a very long time. You could remove a random stat, but that's not our way either. We go to the occultist and roll to change a stat, specifically plus to all skills. No matter what value rolls, we choose no change. So by attempting to change this stat, we are making it unmodifiable through the cube with our recipes. Now, returning to the cube, we can use the same targeted stat change function to alter only the 2 remaining offensive stats. These are the main stat and our plus to earthquake skill. We roll as many times as it takes to get the needed skill group. It took me 4 prisms. Each roll attempt costs us 1 prism. But I had a thought. I only have 1 martial skill, but 4 from the combat category. It would be much cooler if I could get a plus to those. No sooner said than done, 6 more attempts and it was done. Now I have plus 2 to all skills and plus 2 to all combat skills. Alright, now we have 3 stats that we're happy with and it's time to add a 4th offensive stat. To do this, we select the option to add a stat, put the prism for an offensive stat in, and hit the transmute button. We'll definitely get an offensive skill. Here's an important nuance. The game considers the core stat to be offensive as well, so with each click, we'll be changing one of the 2 stats. For my current build, combinations of the core stat, critical strike damage multiplier, vulnerable damage multiplier, and critical strike chance will work. All these stats in any combination. I roll until the result is acceptable. Again, we count the attempts by prisms. There were 675, now 667. That's 9 prisms total. That's it. For 9 prisms on the core stat and 9 prisms on the offensive stat, I got a beautiful amulet. This is very cheap and you can craft these kinds of amulets on an industrial scale. How to transfigure an amulet correctly so you don't ruin the item. After getting all the needed stats, the smart rule comes into play. This is important for beginners so they don't ruin the item. Any item. It goes like this. Smart, socket, masterwork, aspect, reroll, temper. The order isn't exactly that, but it's a handy reminder of the necessary actions. We already used the reroll to lock in a stat at the occultist. Next, we go to the blacksmith and do the needed tempering. Since our item has 900 power, we can get a GA on the affix we receive. For my build, I need cooldown reduction, and I get the GA on my second attempt. Usually a GA takes between 5 and 10 attempts. Then right here at the blacksmith, I masterwork the amulet. After that, I reroll the masterwork crit to the one I need. I want the crit on plus to all skills, and I get it after a few attempts. Next, I go to the jeweler and add a socket. After that, I go to the occultist and imprint the aspect. That's it! The smart rule, socket, masterwork, aspect, reroll, temper is complete. You can go to the cube and perform the transfiguration, which will make the item unmodifiable. But there's a nuance. How to put 2 aspects in an amulet. In Diablo 4 amulet crafting, there is an exception, namely adding a second aspect to an amulet. This only works with amulets and they can be of any rarity. Legendary, unique, mythic. Rarity doesn't matter here. To add a second aspect, we choose the same cube option, transfiguration. But this time, we put this specific prism into the cube. It's what will give us the second aspect on the amulet. What aspect can be added to an amulet? The second aspect can only be an aspect from the utility category. You can see exactly which aspects are available for crafting at the occultist. You need to place the amulet in the slot and select the needed category. Now you can see all the aspects available for crafting. Next, go to the cube, insert the necessary prism, and start crafting. This usually takes upwards of 10 attempts to get the desired aspect. 2 aspects work for me. I got this one, so I'll keep it. I'll put the second aspect from this group on my boots. In total, getting the second aspect took me 7 prisms. How to properly do an amulet transfiguration. Now we do the final amulet transfiguration in the cube. It can be done in 2 ways. The first, without prisms, gives you the entire range of possible affixes and their values, from completely useless to the most awesome. There's also a small chance that the item can be modified again, a tiny chance. Modify in this context means adding another stat through this same transfiguration. It is possible, but it requires a huge number of attempts, meaning amulets, and there's a separate strategy for that. For casual players, it's enough to just know that the possibility to get 2 or more stats through this transfiguration exists. You can see such items on top ladder players, more often on the ladder in the regular game mode with trading. For mere mortals, a group I count myself among, such items are practically unattainable. The second option is to place the prism of entropy. This gives us a narrower range of values for the additional stat we get, while excluding useless stats like item indestructibility. But this prism will guaranteed make the item unmodifiable. I choose this option and get a bonus to health. That's it, the crafting of a super accessible, excellent amulet is finished. As you can see, it's not expensive and is available to anyone. You can see which stats belong to which categories in this picture made by the community, changing the legendary GA Amulet. Now let's consider the scenario where we already have an amulet that initially has a needed Greater Affix. Let's say it's the resource amount stat, which is currently relevant for barbarians. An important detail, you can save stats with a GA through a reroll at the occultist too, just like we did in the previous case. Tip: when you reroll without changing the affix value, the GA star will disappear, but the stat itself will remain 50% larger. On this specific amulet, we also need 3 offensive stats, plus we want to leave the resource stat untouched. We choose the option to change an affix to a random one. We put the prism on the resistance stat. This means the resistance stat will change to a random one. The GA on the resistance will disappear. We got the critical strike chance stat. It's useful, but not the best. We insert the offensive prism and choose the targeted stat change. We roll and change 1 stat out of the 3. With each roll, 1 stat's value changes or it changes to a different offensive stat. We roll until we get the maximum value for one of the stats we need. We get fire damage. Right now, there are top barbarians with fire dot damage, and this is just an example. So we'll assume we're making an amulet for a fire dot build. I go to the occultist and roll to change the stat we need. I change it, but choose the No Changes option. By doing this, I'm preserving this stat and it can no longer be changed in the cube. I return to the cube, choose Targeted Stat Change again with the offensive prism. Now with each roll, only 2 stats or their values are changing, and so I roll until I get the maximum or near maximum desired value. On my 8th roll, I got a decent value. That's it. Now I go and follow the SMART rule. Socket, Masterwork, Aspect, Reroll, Temper. I explained all of this above. Don't forget about the second aspect on the amulet. These stat manipulations are not available for unique and mythic items, but they were available on the PTR before Season 14. So this might not be the final version of crafting, and they could give us something new in the future. A piece of advice: don't overinvest into crafting items, any items. Why? The explanation is simple. During the final transfiguration, a super stat can roll. For example, on a weapon is doubling the gem bonus. On a ring is plus to all skills, etc. The more items you craft and transfigure, the higher your chance to get such a super stat. Or you can transfigure items without a prism, and then you have a chance to get an item with 2 additional stats. Top items crafted condition. On SSF, where I play, for example, this is nearly impossible. But on the regular mode with trading, you can get such items. This is the rank 1 barb on the regular mode right now. But don't hold any illusions. This is possible if you play and trade for 16 hours a day with the support of a clan or community, if you're a streamer, or if you spend real money on gear. Items like this are the result of a huge number of attempts and luck. That's all for crafting a top amulet for next to nothing. If you liked it, drop a like. If you didn't, still drop a like. And no matter what, leave a comment. Write if you need a similar guide for armor. I'd also appreciate a sub. Thanks for watching. Bye.